At some point in your life, you're going to die. You already know that. But here's what most people never stop to ask. When did humans first figure that out? And what happened the moment they did? Because for most of Earth's history, no creature on this planet understood death. Animals react to it. They flee from it. But they don't contemplate it. They don't lie awake at night knowing it's coming for them. That shift from reacting to death to thinking about death is arguably one of the most important moments in all of human history. And scientists have found evidence it may have happened over 300,000 years ago. Think about that for a second. 300,000 years ago, something in the human mind cracked open, and nothing was ever the same after that. So what did early humans actually think about death? And how do we even know? Let's start with a place called the Rising Star Cave System in South Africa. Deep inside this cave, so deep that you have to squeeze through passageways, barely wider than a human body, researchers discovered something in 2013 that stopped the scientific world in its tracks. Hundreds of fossilized bones, not scattered randomly by nature or dragged in by predators, deliberately placed. These bones belong to a species called Homo naledi, a human relative that lived roughly 230,000 to 300,000 years ago. And here's the twist that made this discovery almost impossible to accept. Homo naledi had a brain about the size of an orange, a third the size of yours. Conventional wisdom said a creature that small-brained couldn't possibly be capable of intentional burial, couldn't possibly understand death, but the cave said otherwise. The bones were in a remote chamber with no evidence of predators, no signs of flooding that could have carried them there. The lead researcher, Lee Berger, made a bold claim. Homo naledi was intentionally disposing of its dead, maybe even mourning them. And if that's true, it means the concept of death didn't begin with modern humans. It began much, much earlier. But the story gets darker before it gets clearer. Jump forward in time, roughly 60,000 to 70,000 years ago, to a cave in the Zagros Mountains of Iraq called Shinidar Cave. This is where archaeologists uncovered the remains of at least 10 Neanderthals, and one of them, known as Shinidar 4, was found surrounded by what appeared to be clumps of pollen, dozens of different flower species. When this was first published in 1960 by researcher Ralph Seletsky, it rocked the scientific community. The idea that Neanderthals buried their dead with flowers, with intention, with emotion, shattered the image of the brutish caveman. It suggested these people grieved, that they honored their dead, that they, too, understood that something irreversible had happened. Now, and here's the cliffhanger, more recent analysis has suggested the pollen may have been brought in by burrowing animals. The debate is still alive, but even the skeptics can't fully dismiss what's been found there, because other Neanderthal burials tell a similar story. At La Pharisee in France, Neanderthal graves dating back 70,000 to 90,000 years show bodies placed in deliberate positions, curled up, almost fetal, with stone tools and animal bones nearby. At Kabara Cave in Israel, a Neanderthal buried 60,000 years ago still had its hyoid bone intact, the small bone in the throat connected to speech, which has led some researchers to suggest Neanderthals may have had some form of spoken language. And if they could speak about the world, what stopped them from speaking about death? From asking where the dead go? That question, where do we go? Might be older than you ever imagined. And the answer early humans came up with changed everything. Because here's what the archaeological record shows us. As soon as humans started burying their dead, something else started appearing alongside the bodies. Pigment, red ochre, an iron-based mineral, was smeared on bones, placed in graves, painted on the dead. At a site called Skull Cave in Israel, 130,000 years ago, modern humans were buried with perforated shells likely worn as jewelry. At Kafze Cave, also in Israel, a child was buried 90,000 years ago, with deer antlers deliberately laid across the body. These weren't accidents, these were rituals. And rituals require something very specific. They require belief. Belief that the act means something. Belief that there is something beyond the moment of death worth acknowledging. Which means early humans weren't just aware of death. They were trying to do something about it. They were trying to send the dead somewhere. And that impulse, that very human need to believe death isn't the end, is the root of every religion, every mythology, every funeral rite that has ever existed on this planet. That's not a small thing. That's possibly the most important cognitive leap our species ever made. But here's what really gets you. We don't know what those early humans felt in that moment. We can see the graves. We can see the ochre and the shells and the flowers, real or debated. But we can't hear the sounds they made. We can't know if they wept. We can't know if they were afraid. What we do know is that they did something. When someone they knew stopped breathing, they didn't just walk away. They stayed. They prepared the body, they placed it with care, and that act, that simple, quiet, profoundly human act, is the oldest evidence we have that someone, somewhere, understood what loss meant. That 300,000 years ago, in a dark cave, a small-brained relative of yours looked at a body and decided it mattered, and that decision echoes all the way to today. Every funeral you've ever attended, every tombstone you've ever read, every prayer ever spoken over the dead, it all traces back to that moment, to the first time a human brain understood that life ends, and refused to let it mean nothing. So the next time you think about your own mortality, and you will remember that you're not alone in that fear. You never were. You're just the latest in a 300,000-year-long line of humans who looked death in the face and said this means something. If that hit different, drop a comment below and tell me what you think. Like the video if it made you think twice, and subscribe to Yesterday's Secret because the past has a lot more to say.